Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. So, I made my first million at the age of 26, but if I'd followed the advice that I'm going to share in this video, I probably would have gotten there a lot sooner. And so these are the 5 key lessons that I would give to my younger self if I were to start all over again. Okay, so let's start with the first lesson. Now, back when I was younger, everyone I knew was a doctor. My parents were doctors, all of their friends were doctors, and the way that people got rich, like the people who I knew who had a lot of money, essentially they got there because they were doctors and they bought houses in London in the 1980s. And so the whole messaging around financial success, it was so implicit. It was, you get a job like working as a doctor, and then over time you buy houses, and then over time you'll become like financially successful, or words to that effect. But then at the age of 17, I read a book that changed my life, and that was The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And I will forever be indebted to Tim Ferriss for putting me on this path, because this book taught me that actually financial success did not have to look like you work your ass off for 65 years and then you retire to a beach when you've got a bunch of properties. Like, it taught me that that wasn't actually the path, and that in fact there was a way of becoming financially successful while you're relatively young, and you can join what he calls the new rich, i.e. the people who recognize the value of time, freedom, and independence rather than just the value of money. And the book made me realize that, wait a minute, do I really want to live a life where every day I'm showing up to work, maybe not necessarily enjoying my day job, maybe I'll find bits of it enjoyable, but like broadly I might not enjoy it. Do I really want to do that for the sake of the promise of retirement further down the line? And reading The 4-Hour Workweek was the first time in my life that I really thought, wow, I'm going to set it as a goal of mine to reach financial freedom, financial independence. I didn't even have that terminology before I read the book, but it became a clear goal in my mind. And so that's lesson number 1. Lesson number 1 is to have a clear goal for financial freedom in mind. You don't necessarily need to have a number. I never had a magic number. I still don't have a magic number in my mind for like, I need X amount of money to consider myself financially independent. But the thing that The 4-Hour Workweek taught me was that actually building streams of passive income or active income or building a business was the way to unlock the freedom and the optionality that I wanted from my life. And so the reason I'm mentioning this as lesson number 1 is, this video is how I became a millionaire in my 20s. Basically, if you don't have a goal of becoming financially independent or financially free or being a millionaire, whatever that thing is, while you're young, then it's probably not going to happen. This sort of stuff does not happen accidentally. People don't just wake up and stumble into some sort of thing that makes them super financially successful. Every single person I know who has achieved whatever they deem to be financial freedom has done it very, very intentionally. They've had it as a goal in their mind. And even just the fact that you then have this as a goal means that, manifestation and all that kind of stuff, but essentially the brain starts to recognize patterns and starts to look out for opportunities to help you get towards that goal. So ever since I read The 4-Hour Workweek and I got this idea in my mind that I want to become financially free, suddenly my brain started to see these opportunities everywhere. And then every year through medical school, while I was keeping up with my studies, while I was socializing, doing all the stuff, in the back of my mind, and sometimes in the front of my mind, was this idea of, I want to be financially free. I need to therefore build assets and build businesses around me that can allow me to make money while I sleep, so that when I do medicine, I'm doing it for fun rather than for money. And you've probably come across this idea that you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And for most of us, and certainly for me growing up, the people that I was spending my time with were not on this path to financial freedom. The people I was spending my time with, they're still really good friends of mine. They're all like fairly normal people who wanted to become doctors or be lawyers or be management consultants or be investment bankers, all that kind of stuff. But I was really the only person in my friendship group, other than my brother, who was into this whole like, oh, let's build stuff on the internet, let's make money online, all this kind of thing. But I think the really cool thing about the time that we live in is that you don't necessarily need to have actual people around you who are doing this thing to benefit from this averaging effect of the 5 people around you. Because depending on what sort of content you consume, what books you read, what books you listen to, what podcasts you listen to, what YouTube videos you watch, those things can somewhat mirror the effects of these 5 people around you. Obviously, I would still continue hanging out with my friends. I'm not going to say to my friends, hey, Jake, I'm not going to hang out with you anymore because you're not like trying to make money on the internet. But it does mean that while I'm at the gym or while going for a run, I'm listening to podcasts like the Indie Hackers podcast or My First Million or Smart Passive Income with Pat Flynn or Online Marketing Made Easy with Amy Porterfield. I'd be looking out for podcasts where people are talking about how they are making their money. It's all going to make my brain tune into the frequency of what are the things I need to look out for in the world to try and move towards this goal of financial freedom that I have. Oh, and by the way, in case you haven't heard, my new book has just launched. It's called Feel Good Productivity. It's a guide on how to do more of what matters to you. It's a culmination of the past 10 plus years of my own experience with productivity, combined with hundreds of hours of research papers and interviewing experts and trying to condense it all into a book. It's got 54 actionable experiments that you can apply to your life for being more productive in a way that's actually enjoyable and meaningful and sustainable. So if you want to check it out, head over to the website feelgoodproductivity.com, which is linked down in the video description, and it's available in countries all around the world. Let's move on to lesson number 2 now. And this is the thing that I wish someone had told me when I was very, very young. I sort of implicitly took in this message, but I wish it had been told to me way more explicitly. Now, again, in my previous life, all I knew was the way you make money is by having a job, right? Like you work as a doctor, you work as a lawyer, and people give you money for doing that thing. And it's like, that's the only conception of money that I had. But a job is basically, if you imagine a machine, a job is where you are a component, a cog within that machine. You are component labor. And the whole education system teaches us to be component labor inside some sort of machine. The modern education system is built off the back of the Industrial Revolution, where the objective was to train people to become cogs in factories, where we go into the education system as a unique individual with our own strengths and desires and all this kind of stuff, creativity, and we're all spat out of the education system with like a grade point average or with like standardized tests and all this kind of stuff. We are very much trained to be a cog inside a machine. Now, in this metaphor, the cog within the machine is known as a job, but the machine itself is known as a business. And the person who owns the machine, the business owner, is the one who becomes rich while they're young. And so lesson number 2 is that if you want to become a millionaire in your 20s, you need to start your own business. There are very few jobs that allow you to become a millionaire. Very rarely that will happen in your 20s. Maybe if you work at Goldman Sachs, maybe if you're a neurosurgeon in the US, then of course, yeah, you're going to become a millionaire. But it'll probably happen in your 30s. You're probably going to have to work really, 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 really hard for it. You don't have that much leverage on your time. By far the most sensible path, if you actually care about becoming very financially successful, is you need to have your own business. So what is a business? Well, a business, to really simplify it down, a business just solves a problem in exchange for money. A business just solves a problem in exchange for money. Now, broadly, there are 3 different types of businesses, arguably 2, but like, let's go with 3. The first one is a service business, where you are doing a thing and then charging money for the thing. For example, an accountant is broadly a service business. You're doing someone's accounts and then you are charging them money for the thing. A mechanic or a plumber is a service business. You are doing a thing, doing mechanicking or plumbing, and you are charging people for that service. Next up, we have product businesses, where you are making a thing and then charging more than one person for that thing, ideally. So for example, if you own a bakery, that is a product business. You are baking lots of bread and then you are charging people for the bread. You're making money, and that is the business, that is the machine. The people who bake the bread, who work inside the business, are the cogs. They have a job, but the person who owns the bakery is the business owner. They own the machine. That person becomes very rich. And then the third type of business is a bit of a modern innovation, but I would call that a content business, where the business model is that you're making content online and you're monetizing it through advertising. There's a bit of nuance here. Some would argue that a content business isn't really a proper type of business because it's actually, you're just a marketing channel for someone else's product. Because fundamentally, the way this video makes money on AdSense, for example, is there were ads before this video. But content, I think, is becoming way more of its thing, which is why I'm calling it a third category of business. And so the advice that I would give to my younger self is that if you want to be a millionaire in your 20s, then you need to build some sort of business, either a service business or a product business or a content business, or maybe even all of the above. At this point, we've got the goal of financial independence and we have adjusted our content diet accordingly. We know that the only real way to get there is to start some sort of business. And so that begs the question, well, how do you actually start the business? And honestly, the main thing I would say is just give it a go. We've already talked about the 3 different types of businesses: service, product, and content. I would recommend starting with a service business. A service business is by far the easiest way to start making money. Now, when I was 13 years old, I started my first service business, and I started being a freelance web designer. And then within a few months, I started calling myself a web design agency. It was just me as a 13-year-old kid in school, getting home from school and designing websites and trying to market my services on the internet on a website that was called getacoder.com back in the day. And that was where I got my first taste of making money online. I was solving a problem, i.e. web design stuff, and charging for the solution, i.e. $5, $10 here and there. Then from the age of 14 to 19, I had another sort of mini business, I would call it, and that was private tutoring. And I was being paid for that. I was being paid £4 an hour, then £4.50, then £5 and £6. And then I started doing it for GCSEs and A-levels, so exams here in the UK, and I was being paid £15 an hour. And that was more money than I'd ever seen in my life. I felt really rich. I would go to the bank and I'd, get my little cash in hand and like put it in a little envelope and deposit it. I'd be like, whoa, £360 this month. I'm rich. And that's why this is lesson number 3. Have a strong bias to action. The best way you learn how to build a business is by trying to build a business. You don't learn how to build a business by doing an MBA. You don't learn how to build a business by reading books. You don't learn how to build a business by watching videos. You learn how to build a business by actually doing the thing. And then while you're doing the thing, now you can supplement the action with your learning. Action is the foundation and learning is the supplementation. So I was doing service-based businesses from the age of 13 to 19-ish, and then I graduated, shall we say, to a product business, where at the age of 19, I decided to make a product, which was a course that would help people get into medical school. Still somewhat service component because I was the one teaching that course initially, but then at some point I was hiring people as cogs, as employees, as contractors, to work within my business so that they were teaching the courses and I was owning the business. And in our first year, we made 10K that year, which was like, whoa, £10,000 in a single year? What the hell? Second year, we did about 80K. Third year, we did about 150K. And then year 4, 5, and 6, we sort of hovered at that 150K a year revenue mark with margins of around 30%. And so I was taking home somewhere between 40 and 50,000 pounds while I was in medical school. And then at the age of 23, I pivoted somewhat into a content business. I decided to start my YouTube channel. My reasoning was that, hey, if I make videos that help people get into medical school, which is what I was doing back in 2017, then people will buy my courses. And so this YouTube channel started off as a marketing asset for my business. But then over time, I realized that actually making videos is way more fun, way more rewarding, and actually way more lucrative than this old medical school admissions business was. But the lesson I would say to my younger self is that at each stage, if you're genuinely trying to achieve financial freedom, if you're trying to be a millionaire in your 20s or however old you are, focus on action, have a bias to action. But then that brings us on to lesson number 4. And I think this was the biggest mistake that I made. And if I had done things differently, I would have probably gotten to this millionaire point way sooner than age 26. Now, bias to action is really good, but I think in my case, I was too much bias to action and not enough time actually spent learning. Every time I would do something, I was basically trying to invent the playbook from scratch. When I built my first business doing this medical school admission stuff, I was trying to build it from scratch. I didn't know anything about sales and marketing. I didn't know anything about operations or finance or delegation or management. I didn't even know what these words meant. I didn't even know that these words existed. Like, obviously I'd heard the word marketing, but I just thought, what is marketing? I don't know, billboards. So for example, we got to a point with that business, SixMed, where we were stalling at 150K annual revenue. At this point I was thinking, damn, how do we make more money? And there's only really 2 ways of making more money, at least top line, which is you either get more customers or you charge more money to those customers. What I didn't realize is that this whole thing of how do you get more customers and how do you charge them more money, this is literally called sales and marketing. And there are literally books and courses and videos and podcasts that are all about sales and marketing. And this is stuff that people have already figured out. And had I just bothered to read a book about sales and marketing, it would have completely leveled up the business because I would have had a firmware update in my own mind. I'd have been like, oh, that's how you do it. Similarly, we got to a point with that business about 2 years in where I felt very overwhelmed. We were doing about 100K revenue-ish, and I was feeling so overwhelmed because I was doing all the admin, all the operations, all the logistics, all the bookkeeping, all the accounting, all of the tax returns, like all of that stuff. I was doing it all myself while trying to do medical school on the side, while trying to have a social life. And while at the same time, I was trying to be the coder and developer, and I just didn't know at the time, but this is a thing that every single business goes through. And at that point, you need to hire someone. And that is where businesses grow, through hiring, through delegation, through management, through onboarding, through leadership, through having a vision, to setting goals, to getting people into the business to work as the cogs. And I just had absolutely no idea that that was even possible because I had never read a book at that point on how to do business. Thank you. So these are just a handful of the business books that I've read in the last few years, and had I read like literally any of these when I was younger or anything similar to business books, I would have realized that actually these are the mistakes I'm making. This one in particular, The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. This book literally describes all of the things I was struggling with when trying to build that first business. And had I just known this existed, I'd been like, wow, I don't have to be so overwhelmed. I don't have to do all this stuff by myself. I can hire people. Bloody hell, that would have blown my freaking mind. And I just wish someone had told me that even these books even existed. I had no idea. I biased to action so much to the point that I forgot to learn along the way. And so the advice that I would implore my younger self who is on this journey of financial independence is lesson number 4. Please make time every single week to learn things. Learn things through reading books, listening to audiobooks, listening to podcasts, taking courses if you want, watching YouTube videos where people are actually drilling into the details rather than kind of staying surface level. Potentially even think about hiring a coach or getting a mentor. Hiring a coach is the single biggest ROI expense I have ever made in my life. If when I was younger, when I was first making money with my business at the age of 19, I wish someone had sat me down and said, hey, look, man, do you think you can get better at tennis without a coach? Maybe you can watch tennis videos on YouTube and like read books about it, but like, do you think you'd improve faster at tennis if you had a tennis coach? Probably. Everyone has a tennis coach. I had a tennis coach when I was young. Why did I not think I should hire a business coach? I just didn't realize. I just did not know it was a thing. And so if you're at this point in the video, I'm imploring you, please, younger me or whoever you are watching this, I so wish I'd spent more time learning. Learning is always the thing that gets bumped from the calendar because there's always other shit going on in the business. And even as I was planning this video and I realized that this is a lesson that I'm still not taking forward enough to myself. Like at this point, the stuff I need to learn to level up the business is no longer found in books, audiobooks and podcasts, particularly because people tend not to go that in depth in those things and they don't have very much context. But the way that people level up their business at the stage that I am is by hiring coaches and by going to events and masterminds where you're surrounded by other business owners. There are even people I know who spend $50,000 a year to literally just join a Zoom call once a quarter with other business owners. And they say that that $50,000 expense has generated a 10x or greater return on investment, i.e. by paying $50,000, they've unlocked learnings that have allowed them to make $500,000. total freaking no-brainer. But depending on where you are in the journey, I feel very passionate about this. I would just implore myself, there are books about this stuff. You do not need to invent the playbook from scratch. Please take my advice. Learn from the mistakes that I've made. Please learn along the way, but remember that action is the foundation and learning is the supplement. Whew, that felt like a good rant. Let's move on to the final lesson, lesson number 5, which is basically that I tried making my first dollar on the internet when I was 13 years old. I am now 29, and it took me 13 years to make my first million. And my journey of like income over time has been a slow compounding gain over the long term. So for me personally, I basically made $0 from age 13 to 19 despite trying all this stuff. Then I made about 10K a year from 19 to 20. Then I made around 100K a year from around 21 to 25. And then I started making $1 million a year and beyond from the age of 25 and a bit onwards, 26 onwards. But the point I want to make is that it took me 13 years from the age of 13 to 26 to make my first million. That is a long time. But the key over time, and this is the final lesson, is you need to not stop. You need to not give up. Because there are so many people that start on the path to building a business or to making a YouTube channel, whatever the thing might be. They start on the path, but then they stop. They don't see the results immediately, and they stop. And this is why it's a lot harder to do this side hustle stuff when you have a day job. I was doing it as a student, where my time was worth nothing. Like, I was not making any money in my time, and therefore, even if I was putting 4 hours of work and getting like $10 out of it, I was like, yes, I'm making money. It's better than nothing. But it's so hard now for my friends who have real jobs because now you have an hourly rate and you have a paycheck that's coming in once a month. And there is nothing that stifles innovation more than a paycheck that comes in once a month. Because now you're thinking, well, I could spend 10 hours working on my business this weekend, but I don't really need to. I've got money coming in. I'm so comfortable. Like, life is good. And if you're content with that kind of lot in life, fantastic. All power to you. But I also have loads and loads of friends who have those jobs, but who would love to have financial freedom. They would love to be able to quit the job or to go part-time and have the freedom to unlock the autonomy and the life that they actually want to lead, but they do not stay consistent, they do not take action, and part of that is because they are hoping for results too soon. And you cannot hope for results too soon in this game. You have to play it for the long term. You've got to play the long-term game. You need to not give up. And you have to have, as Gary Vee calls it, impatience with actions, but supreme patience with results. And honestly, the way that I've done this over time is that for me, this whole thing of building businesses and learning the skills and charging for them and learning all this stuff and providing value along the way and all this kind of stuff, all of it has just been so fun. It's been so enjoyable. It's been so energizing. It's been so exhilarating. Like, I remember even back in the day when I was 13 years old, I could not wait to get home from school, to get on the computer, to go on my Get a Coder profile and see, have I got any work coming in? That first day where I got my first $5 gig on Get a Coder was just like, oh my God, I've made money on the internet. I made a PayPal account. I had to lie about my age because I was 13 and the minimum age was 18, but I had like $5 in my PayPal account. Blew my mind. And it was so exhilarating. And I still have that feeling now with building this business, even the stuff that I was building while in medical school and while working as a doctor, building the YouTube channel. And so if you're playing this game, then find a way to do it over the long term. And I think the way to do it over the long term is find a way to make it feel good. And this is in fact what my brand new book is about, Feel Good Productivity. I'll link it down below if you want to check it out. Basically, the thesis of the book is that if you want to do more of the things that matter to you, focus on making them feel good, because feeling good drives energy, energy drives productivity, and just improves your life overall. So if you fancy checking this out, there'll be some bonuses. There's a link down below. And I think really the way to think about it is, like, let's say when I was working as a doctor and building this YouTube channel, or when I was a medical student and building the first courses business, or whatever the thing might be. When I was in high school and I was making websites on the side, doing the business was more fun than the alternative. Like, I would rather work on my business than I would scroll TikTok or scroll Instagram or scroll Twitter or watch something on Netflix. It's more energizing, it's more exhilarating, it's more enjoyable. I feel like I'm using my skills, I feel like I'm learning, I feel like I'm leveling up. And if you can get to that point where the work that you are doing genuinely feels like play, and you're doing this thing of following this advice and learning along the way, then it's difficult to imagine a world in which you wouldn't reach financial success, at least at some point. What matters is that you're solving a problem and you're charging for the solution, and you're building a business, you're building the machine, and you are the owner of that machine. You are not a cog in someone else's machine. So this is the advice that I would give to myself. Find a way to make it fun. Find a way to enjoy the journey, because the more you enjoy the journey, the more the journey is sustainable, and it takes a long time to get the results. But if you stick on the path long enough, you'll be looking back at your life and you'll think, oh my God, wow, I had such a great time building this business. I would not change anything. I would not trade it for the world. And now I'm a freaking multimillionaire where I can do whatever I want and I can quit my job because, like, actually I can just do whatever I want. Like, if someone had told me that 13 years ago, 16 years ago when I started on this path, I would have had a stroke and a heart attack and a hernia all at the same time. I would not even have known that it's even remotely possible. Now, if you're interested in specific ideas of side hustles and businesses that you could potentially start, then I've got a list of 7 side hustle ideas over here to hopefully give you some more ideas of what sort of business you can start with. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you hopefully in the next video. Bye-bye.